When we begin to notice a thought in ourselves, or when we begin to feel an emotion start to surge slightly or extremely, and when we begin to register a sensation of any kind through our five senses, two things usually happen. The first thing is that we almost immediately take interest in the thought or the feeling or the sensation. And we now feed it with our attention. So we take interest, we feed it with our attention, we begin to indulge in it, and our awareness of it attaches to the thought or to the feeling or to the sensation. The second thing that happens is that now, with awareness attached, it begins to form as an identity. It begins to now become completely identified with the thought or emotion or sensation. And this feeling begins to form as, I am these thoughts, I am these feelings, I am these sensations. These are my thoughts, these are my feelings, these are my sensations. This is me thinking, this is me feeling, this is me experiencing sensation. A simple way to think of this, a simple way to visualize this, is to visualize yourself standing overlooking a meadow, and you're on one side of the fence, and on the other side of the fence is a large meadow, and on the other side of the meadow there's a forest, like a deep wood. And periodically animals come out of that forest, out of that deep wood, and they emerge into the meadow where you can now see them. Before that you couldn't see them. And now they are in the meadow. And in this analogy, what happens is our awareness usually becomes quite interested in these animals, these thoughts and emotions and sensations. And it jumps over the fence, or it walks through the fence, it goes into the meadow, and it begins to pay attention, close attention. It sort of welcomes these animals. It wants to domesticate them, you could say, and it begins to feed them and almost make friends with them. And rather than awareness keeping any kind of distance from them, it attaches to them, it identifies with them. In a very real sense, it becomes the animals in this meadow. It is another analogy is to think of there are characters in us in the form of thoughts and emotions and sensations, and they're all backstage. And periodically they come out onto center stage. Now they're visible, the spotlight is on them, and our awareness immediately surrounds them and attaches to them, indulges in them, feeds them with attention. And as a result of this, awareness now becomes the thought. It becomes the actor who's come onto stage. It becomes the animal who's appeared in the meadow. And it believes that that is what it is and who it is. One way to change our relationship to our thoughts and sensations and feelings is to think of them in this way as animals stepping into the meadow and just letting them be there, just watching them in the meadow. And it doesn't matter what kind of animal it is, but just letting them be there and experience ourselves as being the watcher, just sitting on the fence on the far side of the meadow and feeling ourselves internally as a sense of being, not as a sense of I in relation to what we're seeing, but just as a sense of being, and to not make any kind of movement toward what appears, to not encourage our thoughts and emotions, not to touch them, not to touch our sensations, and not to feed any of our feelings with our attention, particularly in the sense of I, to actually see them as objects in the distance in our internal world, as though we were looking at an animal appearing out of the forest and wandering in the meadow for just a little while before it makes its way back into the forest. And there is a kind of a secret or a key that can help in this respect, and it is to understand that envision this meadow and as like a dome, a clear dome, and awareness is outside of it. Awareness is actually on the other side of the fence. And the fence is like a membrane. It's like a transparent membrane. And the animals, the objects, the thoughts and feelings and sensations that appear in this dome or in this meadow, they lack the ability to step through the membrane and into the realm of awareness itself, into pure awareness, which is a different dimension, a different realm inside of us. Now they can come right up to the edge of this membrane and almost put their nose against it and look at awareness and in a way tempt awareness and try to lure awareness. Say, come into the meadow with me. Mistake yourself for me. Embody me. Infuse me with a sense of identity as I. What happens is that awareness is unusual in that it can both remain on the other side of this membrane, on the other side of the fence, just looking, and it can also pass through the membrane. It can step through this glass window, if you like, and into the meadow, and which is into the mind. And when it does this, it inevitably becomes whatever it's moving toward because it attaches. It has to, you could say, gain great mastery over itself to be able to wander in the meadow without attaching to anything in the meadow and to retain awareness of itself while wandering through the mind. So just let all of these thoughts, these feelings, these sensations, as much as you're able, just let them be. Let them be there. Don't be afraid of them. Don't welcome them. Don't hurry them. Let them stay as long as they like. They cannot stay forever. They appear out of the forest and they wander in the meadow for a bit, or maybe they run around and they try to garner attention. But inevitably they do go back into the forest. All the actors do go backstage eventually. And so there's nothing to be worried about or afraid of in this regard as awareness. And you will notice that what happens is the more you do this, you will experience less and less of a feeling of I in relation to your thoughts and emotions and sensations. And you will not, because you will not be feeding them, you'll not be perpetuating this sense of identity in them. And instead, you will begin to experience more and more the sense of just being, which is what awareness or consciousness is. It is just being. It is not a sense of I. It only becomes I when it attaches, when it forms as identity around these things it's seeing in the meadow on the stage of the mind. And in a sense, this is the key, because we are so prone to welcoming these animals, these creatures in our mind. We are so accustomed to relying on them as a sense of identity. And it seems foreign to not attach to them. It seems foreign to not exist as them and in direct relation to them, and instead to exist just as conscious awareness. This can feel like stepping back into the void, which from the point of view of the mind and from the point of view of thoughts and feelings and sensations, it is a void. That is how they would construe it. But in relationship to itself, conscious being, conscious awareness is by no means a void. It is a rich, very deep, very rich, very silent, very profound dimension of being. And this is what we want to recognize as what we really are at our deepest core. These thoughts, these emotions, these sensations, these creatures stepping out of the forest into the meadow of our mind, whom we have so long accustomed to regarding as ourselves, as our sense of self, they are the real strangers. And there's nothing requiring us really to step over the fence and into the meadow every time they appear. This is our habit, and it's our human limitation. And oddly enough, awareness passing through the human experience needs to learn this, and mainly needs to learn this by recognizing the truth about itself, about what it is as pure being.